officially welcome to the CEO's chair.
Thank you.
And Sahil, a lot of participants, obviously have signed up. Like I said, we've got over 600 participants that are signed up. I'm sure most of them will show up as well. And I just wanted to take a moment and thank Nitin and the entire team that is working behind the scenes to making sure that everything goes well. I know it's technology, so a lot of it is out of our control, but we're going to try our best to make sure that everything goes seamlessly.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Sahil. So Sahil, just a short introduction. I'm sure everybody who's signed up here already knows who you are, already knows about the Minimalist. But a little bit about Sahil. Sahil started the Minimalist, which is a design and a digital consulting company, as a Facebook page when he was still in IIT Mumbai with his, I believe, roommate and his co-founder called Chirag Gantar. And he's since gone on, and you started this in 2015, and you've since gone on to become and grow to now, I believe, a 93-member team, which is amazing. And you're also, working with marquee clients like ITC. You've got Berkshire Hathaway, you've got Coca-Cola, just to name some of them under your belt. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
And I think probably one of the, let's say the crowning achievements that you had, and we talk about success as well, is that both of you were featured on the Forbes 30 under 30 list just last year in 2019. So congratulations on being part of that exclusive club as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So Sahil, right off the bat, and I wanted to start things off a little bit easy. Forbes 30 under 30 talks about leaders, talks about future leaders, talks about successful leaders. So do you feel successful? Do you consider yourself successful?
Not purely because I made it to some list or because we have achieved something, but I mean, I feel successful because in a way that I am enjoying what I am doing. So that and I'm learning every day. I think that's my definition of success. I don't like to measure it in terms of the accolades or awards or money made. So I think in that respect, as long as I'm happy with the work that we're doing, as long as the clients are happy, as long as our team learns and grows and feels that the Minimalist is a great place to work at, I think in that regard, I'm trying to grow and get better. And I feel, that aspect is really going good. And that's how I like to measure success.
Okay, that's really good to hear. I wanted to roll back the years a little bit, and you're 27 now, correct?
Right, 26.
26,
okay.
26,
yeah.
And you started in 2015, and you were 21.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay. So if 26-year-old Sahil had two things that he wanted to say to 21-year-old Sahil, what are those two things that he would like to say?
Yeah, that's a that's a tough question. See, because advice comes, there's a dime a dozen. There's so much advice right now. But of course, I think from whatever I have learned, I think there are a couple of things that I would tell myself. One would, of course, be the fact that, no matter what, I think the entire idea is to not stress out a lot. Because I've read a lot of wisdom on how stress leads to a lot of stress accelerates a lot of health issues. And, as entrepreneurs, things keep going wrong, right? We are always up against the wall, our backs are against the wall, the world is always against us. So it's very natural for us to stress out and freak out a lot. So one thing I would definitely tell myself is that no matter what, just keep track of your health. Nothing should be sacrificed at the cost of your health. And secondly, I think probably what I would say is that, what I have picked up is the right line of business for myself, given the fact that, it's something that I enjoy doing. It's something that has the potential to create jobs. And of course, it's something that I'm decently good at also. So I think this is something where I need to ensure that I make a living out of, no matter how much, right? No matter how much I make or what happens in the end. It's just important to sort of have a larger vision. And if you run after that vision, everything else follows. So I think that's what I would tell myself, rather than just be focused on the material aspects or the numbers too much. Rather look at the vision and what I'm chasing after. So that, 10 years, 20 years down the line, it doesn't feel meaningless. It feels that it's just the first day and it's as enjoyable as it was earlier.
No, absolutely. And I think, and I see a lot of maturity in the way that you're answering, and you've obviously thought this through, right? You've had a couple of years to think this through. we've got a lot of young 21, 22, 23-year-olds out there that are graduating in an economy which, is in lockdown.
Right.
So when you have this level of self-awareness, is this something that developed over the years, or have you always had it?
No, I think, when you are in your 20s, when I was graduating from college, when I was 21, of course, a lot has changed. Things have changed dramatically in the last 4 or 5 years. And I think I attribute a big part of that learning and growth to just reading, right? I read a lot. Or rather, I've started reading a lot in the last 2, 3 years specifically. And I think reading and following some thought leaders really helps put things into perspective. And I think that is where we have really developed our self-awareness. And secondly, I think it's also a learning from the veterans who have been in the business, who know, what are the mistakes that people make that run them into the ground. So just like we were discussing before the webinar started, I think learning from other people's mistakes and ensuring that you aren't doing them is something that has really helped me. So I think reading, learning from others, and just trying to be ahead of the curve at every moment, trying to be open about the areas where you are messing up, because it's very difficult to be self-critical. I think I have had moments where it gets very difficult to even hear a client actually pointing out your faults, or a team member pointing out faults in your policies or whatever, right? Criticism is always tough, but if you have an open ear towards all of these things, it only helps in improvement. So pain plus reflection is progress. I think that's one of the very important principles that I read and learned. I think after every moment of pain, if you don't reflect on that pain, then that pain is bound to come again and haunt you forever. So I think that's been the mantra for us.
But and one important part that you talked about was listening to others.
Right.
As youngsters, as entrepreneurs, I think we are mentally geared not to listen to others, right? Because somewhere you have a vision for yourself, somewhere you know that there is something that you want to do. Right. And truthfully, you feel that nobody else has walked that path. So, but on the other end of the spectrum, you've got a lot of well-meaning people out there, and it could be your parents, it could be, siblings, it could be somebody who's a mentor in the industry, and so on.
Right.
So who do you decide? And I mean, I'd like for you to use a personal case example. Who did you decide who to listen to?
Correct. I think that's a very nice question. And I think I read a book by Ray Dalio, who's a legendary investor, and he has actually broken this down into a very simple phenomenon, which I was using as a heuristic in my own life. But I think he just gave it a very nice term, which I would like to leave over here. It's called believability weighing your advice. So you take advice only from believable people, and the way he defines believable is people who have achieved what you're trying to achieve, and they have done it multiple times so as to have an actual reason, logic, or formula behind achieving that success. For example, if you're trying to understand how to perform a live show, while playing a guitar or whatever, so you actually take advice from people who have played songs live 10, 15 times and have done it over and over again in different scenarios, so they are believable, right? There are many things like, for example, stock picking, where people can be successful even in a random way. So unless they have demonstrated that success again and again and have actual believable reasons behind achieving that success, they are not believable. So I think the idea is in anything just to go after believable people. And the way I have done it is, of course, since we were running a B2B services company, and there could not be a better mentor for me than my own father, because he also runs a B2B services company. And he had started his company in 2011. So by the time I was starting, he already had 6-7 years of experience under the belt, having gone through the entire rigor of running a company and being beaten around by all the forces that try to stop you when you try to open a business in India. So I think those learnings were very critical. Apart from that, we were very fortunate to find a couple of advisors from the industry. One gentleman who had been a CXO in one of India's largest advertising agencies, and another person who had been a CXO in a large bank. So what we got was a lot of learnings from the advertising background, from the creative background, about how things work in this sector, because this is a very different sector with its own quirks. And secondly, also from an organizational standpoint, how to build your vision, how to build your values, how to give feedback, how to sort of structure your policy. So we actually knew that we knew very little, right? That knowledge of your ignorance is the most important skill set to have today, I believe. And fortunately, we knew that we knew nothing, and that helped us. And since we were surrounded, fortunately, by these people who had done things in their careers, I think we got the right advice, at least from them. And then from there on, it was just building our networks and looking at more and more people. So now today, we work with so many partners, so many clients, so many people
Correct.
out there tend to be entrepreneurs who have been there, done that, and I think we have a great pool of people to take advice from.
No, and I think you bring up some great points, Sahil, that one, even it's important for you to know what you don't know, correct?
Right.
It's important for you to have the humility to even acknowledge that there are areas that you are not the expert and there are other people that have probably walked down that path before you have.
Correct.
That's another aspect. And the third part is not not being, I guess, too egoistic, or not being too whether it is shy or whatever term you want to use, to ask for help.
Right. Absolutely.
Because there are a lot of first-time founders that are out there as well that have not had the advantage. And I don't think you had a corporate job before you
Not
started
at
as a
all.
minimalist, right?
I started the company when I was in college. I had a year of college to go. So
Okay.
even on corporate entrepreneurship experience, I didn't even know what it was like to work in a corporate. And that's something that I feel I mean, it robbed me off of an experience of empathizing with what an employee actually feels like. And so
Correct.
there was a lot of learning that we had to do. We still have to do about how people feel when a certain thing is imposed or a certain rule is laid down. So yeah, I mean, I didn't have any corporate experience at all.
So as a first-time founder, would you recommend that somebody gets a couple of years of experience as a corporate employee first and then starts up? Or would you just say, like you did for yourself, if you have the passion, you have the idea, then just jump in with both feet?
So it's very situational. There's no one size fits all advice over there. In our
Mm-hmm.
case, things turned out to be so we were very fortunate. Things fell in place very serendipitously, so to speak, and things worked out, which is why our decision to start right after college, in hindsight, turned out to be good. But
Correct.
I think a lot of things matter. What's the kind of background and network you have? What's the kind of financial position you have with respect to
Mm-hmm.
yourself and your family?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have dependents? Do you have to serve anyone's needs? So there's a lot of variables. I think the advantage of starting early is that I mean you give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, there are no regrets that you didn't try. So of course that factor is there. But then
Correct.
a lot of people jump into it just for the sake of it, and that is probably a piece that I would want to talk about at a later stage whenever you want to discuss that. But yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
jumping into it when you're extremely clear about why you are doing it, what purpose does it serve in your life, how does it align with what's your vision exactly? Does it align with a larger vision? I mean, these are some of the tough questions that people should ask themselves before starting it. More often than not, it's just a fear of missing out, for which I have a big counter. Why there should be no fear of missing out on entrepreneurship. But yeah, so it depends a lot. But in general, I think starting up in college is very difficult. We are very lucky, honestly.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, having a network, having an idea about how things work, and observing the industry really helps. If you look at the data, the jury's out. I mean, most of the largest companies have been started by people in their late 30s and 40s. Like even if you look at the largest brands in the world, so that goes on to say something. It's just that we see right now a lot of youngsters are starting, so we feel that this is the new trend, this is where the new winners are. But
Absolutely.
historically, it's always been experienced people.
So again, rewinding back to a couple of years when you and Chirag met, talk me through what the conversation was like. Are both of you similar personalities? Do you have a very different skill sets that you bring to the table? And what was the inspiration behind the name, The Minimalist?
Right. I think this is a question where I would like to talk about the story also a little bit.
Please,
So
please do.
I go back and go back a few years and talk about how this all started, right? So when
Mm-hmm.
I entered IIT, I thought that I was totally in love with math and science. I was the next Newton. And
Okay.
it took me just one lecture, which I slept through, which was the first lecture, to realize that it wasn't true. And I always was caught in this loop of saying that next semester I'll definitely nail it. Next semester I'm going to definitely get good grades. And that loop just kept extending, that infinity loop from hell. And every semester I would tell myself that next semester I would get good grades, but that never happened. And of course, there aren't infinite semesters. So I realized very early on that academics was not going to be my thing. So
Okay.
there was a lot of time at hand. I would not attend lectures and all. All I would do was be engaged in creative pursuits because that's what I enjoyed. So most of my time at college and I'm not trying to sound cool by saying this. It's absolutely not cool to not attend lectures.
No, of
That's
course not.
just the mistake that I made. All of my time went into creative pursuits, and I was one of the things that I invested most of my time was in writing jokes and also writing a lot of general stuff. So I used to write a lot of jokes and post them on Facebook. Back in the day when Facebook was actually alive and kicking, and you would see people more than ads. So when I would post jokes, people would love it. A lot of people would like it, and that would make me very happy, like the stupid child that I was. And people would come to me and say, "Wow, that was a nice one. Did you really write that?" And I would say, "Of course, I wrote that. I copy, but only in exams." So of course, all of those jokes were written by me, and that used to give me a kick. But then at the end of my third year, I thought, when people were getting ready for their jobs, I thought, is this stupid habit of writing jokes in my hostel room going to get me a job? Is it really going to get me a job? And the answer was a very big, resounding no. So I thought that I need an internship. At least I can't have a blank resume. I need to go out there, do some work. So I got an internship, and I was interning at Oracle in Mumbai.
Okay.
I thought I would do some coding. All I ended up doing was drinking free coffee in their office. So I used to go there every day, and I met this one friend, Chirag, who also was interning at an advertising agency nearby.
Okay.
So I met him, and we used to travel together, not because we were very close friends, just because we had to share the auto bill. But over the journey, over the course of going with him there every day, I learned a few things about him, and we spoke, and we realized that we had two things in common. One was the fact that both of us were really inclined towards creativity. So while I practiced that through, writing, through humor, he did that through creating a lot of thought-provoking designs. And in IIT, he would just focus on designing, and engineering was more like a hobby for him. So he would attend more lectures in the design school than in the engineering school, and he was like the genius in that genius of some three idiots in that design class, and
Wow.
an actual idiot in the engineering class. So both of us were very inclined towards creativity, so that was one thing in common. Second thing in common was, of course, that we had really pathetic grades, and
Okay.
so that got us together. And we thought, why don't we use our common skill set, to do something productive, right? And every time I wrote a joke or every time he made a design, the entire thought process behind it was simple. That whatever we put out there, people should look at it, like it, and then they should think that, wow, how did they even come up with this, right? Who came up with the idea? How did they come up with it? So that's what we call provocation, right?
Okay.
And the entire philosophy was that we'll start a Facebook page where we put out really provocative content that will make people go gaga, and they'll think that, how did they come up with this idea? And the best way to get people provoked is to use the art of minimalism, because when you keep it very simple, you force people to think, and then they get the eureka moment. So that's when we thought that minimalism was the way to go. It was also a very avant-garde philosophy. It hadn't come up back then. 2014 was not a time when people, even globally, were practicing a lot of minimalism. It has just grown as a trend in the last few years. So we thought, let's bring this to the fore and let's start a Facebook page. And that's when he asked me to come up with a few names. So I came up with some really shitty names. And if we had used one of them, I probably wouldn't have been on this webinar also. And then finally, I just chanced upon the name The Minimalist, and he loved it. So we just made the logo in a day, and we just started. So that's how it all started. I started as a very
Okay.
simple Facebook page in our dorm rooms, and just two kids trying to put their creativity out in the open and see what happened after that. And then the traction grew, and slowly, rest of the other things followed. We got a client, and from there we built the entire company.
So I love the part where you talked about the initial part of the journey first, and then the second part. I'm sure it wasn't always as smooth sailing as you make it out to be,
Right.
because taking it from a Facebook page to going and convincing your first client that, listen, we don't have any experience in this field, but why don't you give us a chance, and this is something that we can prove to you.
Right.
If you don't mind, just talking a little bit about who was your first client, and what did that pitch sound like, or what was that experience like?
Right. Of course. I mean, it's very memorable. The best part was that we didn't really have to go out hunting for a client. The first
Okay.
client actually walked in all by themselves. So when we were doing all of this hustle of posting content, and we were getting followers, right? We got 20, 30, 40,000 followers, something like that. Back in 2015, early 2015, when both of us were in college. And Chirag randomly got a call from one of the seniors from our IT network, and
Okay.
they called us and told us that they were starting a new healthcare startup, and they wanted someone to handle their branding, their marketing, the app design, and everything. So we went there for a meeting. That was the very first business meeting, so to speak. So we didn't. So we went there in our chappals and pajamas and
So
Chirag.
the cool IIT students.
No, the shabby IT students, more like that,
Okay.
who hadn't had a bath since 2 weeks. So we went there for a meeting, and
Okay.
Chirag, of course, from whatever little jargon he had learned from his intern, he threw all of that jargon, and we realized for the first time that jargon really helps in meetings. And the client got convinced because not because of what we were saying, but because they'd seen what we were putting out on our social media pages, and they really loved that
Correct.
work. And of course, with a good combination of dirt cheap prices and a lot of creativity, we were able to win our first client. Back then, we didn't even know how to price a project or how operations are supposed to be. In fact, when we were winning that project, I had asked Chirag, how do you design the logo? What is a logo actually? So I mean, that was the kind of innocence that we harbored when you were first
Of course.
starting out. So it was a journey of learning hundreds of things on the go. We were entering a field that we had no idea about as engineers, and that's literally how we won our first client, thanks to the IIT network. It was inbound. We really didn't have to go out there and pitch to our first
Okay.
client. So yeah, and from there it was just one client after the other. As we started doing great work, the word of mouth really helped us.
Nice. As first-time founders, I think one of the most difficult things that anybody faces, especially if you're young, especially if you're, let's say, you're still in college, and you've got a kind of edgy product or a service that, like you guys did. Uh, I don't know of too many other people unless you're, in, let's say, the media industry, where you will even get a foot in the door or a chappal in the door.
Right.
In your case. So what is it that young founders can do to gain credibility of? And I'd consider you a very good size or a large size media organization now.
Right.
So what can first timers do to get your attention or to get your business?
Right. So you're asking, like, how should a young founder go about, getting a foot in the door for larger organizations? Is that the question?
Absolutely. How can a young founder who's just starting out, who doesn't have an established name yet, gain credibility by pitching
Correct.
to some
Correct.
that is meeting for the first time?
Of course. So, the way we did it was very orthogonal to the way the industry does it. People, like you correctly pointed out, people in this business have either been in the business for long before starting,
Correct.
or at least they have some background before entering it. Like, we probably are the only ones who came from a completely different background. And to the point that every meeting that we do starts with the same question: that how did you go from IIT to this? Why did you go
How
from
did you get where you are there?
exactly. I mean, why the field of creativity? Why not, something in engineering or whatever?
Correct.
Yeah. So I think one of the most important things was that we tried to build our credentials not by going out and pitching, but by demonstrating the work first, right? So whenever people saw what the minimalist was putting out, they were so flabbergasted by the content that they thought that these are the guys that we should reach out. So more than an outbound, we followed an inbound strategy where we
Okay.
spoke through our work, and all we were doing was putting out some really mad content out there. And people looked at that content and they thought we want this for our own brand, right? And that's literally how we started getting few clients. And after building a few case studies, we got more and more and more clients. So it's taking one step at a time after you have established that initial traction. So for anyone who's young, I think the entire point in this industry or in any other industry is to first prove your mettle, to prove what you're doing through some other way than directly approaching. Build a few case studies and let people approach you, right? And by building a huge following, we were able to get that critical mass where a lot of potential clients are also watching our content. And that happens to be one of our good strategies to get in a lot of leads even today. So even today, we almost all of our leads are inbound. We don't go out and try to get, because people approach us and they want to work with us. So I think in retrospect, that is the approach that young founders should also take. So let their work or let their technology or their product speak for itself and build cases on the go, which will then get your foot in the door in the largest company.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great strategy for especially people that are in the creative field, whether it is music or it's content or, whether you want to be a influencer, so to speak.
Right.
Just put, and I think Gary Vee talks about this a lot, that just put as much content as you can out there. Let people try and see who you really are, what
Right.
you stand for, and then you can attract the people that that will really find you.
Yes. Yes. So it took a lot of time of putting out content for us to get our first land also. Yeah. And that's where being in college while doing that really helped, because we weren't sitting jobless, although we would have been if we continued that for a longer time. But since we were doing that in college, we didn't have the time pressure or
Of course.
rents to pay that would always remind us that we need revenues coming in. So I think we just were waiting it out. In fact, we weren't even conscious about it. We were just enjoying what we were doing, and the business suddenly started flowing in.
No, it sounds amazing, and a lot of people talk about just not giving up, right? I mean, it was, I'm sure, even in college, it was probably what, a 2-year journey at least before you. How long was it before you got your?
So yes, so when I was in my fifth year, and I had a 5-year course. It's not that I failed in 1 year and got into my fifth year. I had a 5-year course, and when I was starting the fifth year is when we started the company. So in May 2015, we started the business officially. We entered a really shabby garage and called it our office, and that's how the entire journey began. So yeah, May 2015.
And when did you start putting out content, or when did you and Chirag combine forces, so to speak?
Oh yes, so in that content was going out 6-7 months before that, probably in August 2014. It wasn't a company back then; it was just a Facebook page. The company, like I said, started. In fact, the company got registered in October 2015. So officially, we are 4.5 years old. Operationally, we are 5 years old, and that Facebook page is probably 6 years old. Yeah.
Okay. So you were putting out good content, and you were putting out consistent content for a good year and a half before you actually got your first client or you registered the company.
I think 5-6 months. 5-6 months.
Okay.
6 months, 7 months before we got our first client. We did a few projects here and there. Yeah, and then, but yeah, officially to be able to start a company where we saw that we would get a constant stream of clients. Yes, you could say it took us 2 months to in fact get to that point where we were certain that we would be able to pay the bills, and this was a business in the making.
Great. I want to talk a little bit about the way the company culture is built at the Minimalist. Both of you are young leaders. You are just 26. I'm sure not all of your employees are younger than you. I'm sure there are a couple of employees that are probably older than you as well.
Right.
What if I had to ask you what your leadership or what your management style is?
Right.
You have a board of directors or a board of mentors, like you said, that guide you. But at the end of the day, you need to do all the hard work.
Right. So, of course, would love to touch upon the kind of culture that we have also built. So, one of the most important values, core values, is provocation for us, which is the art of doing things differently, right? And I think that's the title of this webinar also. So, we put great emphasis on doing things differently, being quirky and humorous at all times possible. That's literally the tonality of our brand, our company, and that's what we really value in our people also. As a company, since we, the founders, are very young. We have energy as one of our very core values. We believe in being very agile, being very energetic, because in the client business, you have to be super fast. Clients are more demanding than your wives also. So you need to service them well, and for that, you need to be on your toes. So I think one of the things that youngsters are really able to do very well is be agile and jump on the trends very fast. For example, even this work from home thing came, I think it took no time for us to transition into this from a technological standpoint, from an operational standpoint, even though there's quite a number of heads, but I think it was pretty smooth. And that is possible because people are very agile and open. So I think energy, doing things before time, running around is something that we put great emphasis on. Another big value is openness. Our office, if you ever come and see our office, it's fully open. There are no walls. Even the meeting rooms have glass doors. In fact, we don't have any cabins. Like the directors don't have any cabins. We sit out there in the open. So companies talk about having an open door policy. So we don't even have doors. So we actually like to keep it very open. We are very transparent about our revenues and all the numbers with the entire team. Every decision that we take, we very transparently communicate, and we believe that if an organization has to grow, everyone has to be open to giving and receiving feedback. So that's something that we also follow a lot. And I think it's all about giving opportunities to people to learn and grow. So we focus a lot on career growth at the Minimalist. There have been so many people who have been with us for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and they have flourished and how. So we take great care in ensuring that whoever is loyal to us, loyal to the vision, really prospers and grows in the long term. So that's a little bit about what we do. And of course, it's a lot of fun. and a lot of work on some of the largest brands. So that's what really encapsulates the way things happen at the Minimalist.
So it sounds like a great place to work. I know it's not easy because you've got so many different people with different personalities with different skill sets, different working styles. There are probably people that are more like their mornings versus people that like to work late at night.
Right.
And getting them all to row in the same direction, I'm sure is not the easiest.
Yes, absolutely.
Um, Talking a little bit about work-life balance. Uh, I know as a youngster, it's probably it's more about work-life synthesis now, isn't it?
Right,
I
of
mean,
course.
you're working 2 hours and then you can probably take a break and well, you could head to the gym, but you can't head to the gym anymore.
Right,
Work out or listen to music, grab a bite, and then come back to work.
right.
Um, I hear a lot of flack that millennials get and that the Gen Zs get that they're very distracted and they don't really have focus for deep work.
Right.
What is it that you'd like to say about that? Or
Uh,
what are your thoughts on that?
I am 100% proponent of deep work. In
Okay.
fact, that's the title of a book also, which I recently
Mm-hmm.
read, and I'm in love with the philosophy. In fact, after having read that book, I've tried to incorporate more and more time in my own schedule to ensure that I do deep work. And I think Simon Sinek has also touched on this entire philosophy, where he says that the Gen Z is not to be blamed for their distractedness. It's actually the technology that give exposed them to that has forced them into this pit of distraction. So
True.
I think it's our conscious call to take. It's on us to understand how much harm is done by being distracted all the time or being glued to digital technologies. And I believe scheduling and going back to a lot of old school techniques to sort of structure your entire day are very critical. So I do believe people these days, not just Gen Zs, but the entire generation, in fact, even my father or people in the late 40s, late 50s are very, very
Mm-hmm.
distracted today, given the deep influx of technology in our lives, right?
Of
So
course.
whenever we are involved in doing something productive, the simple blip of a phone is enough to distract us, right? If I'm saying something here, even one chat message over here is enough to distract me and put me off the point. So the distractions abound in today's world, and it's totally on us on how do we control this. I think the ideas of deep work and digital minimalism are also extremely crucial today, more than ever, because right now we live in a world where it's impossible to focus. To be very honest, I mean,
So
given
what are some of the hacks that you have for doing deep work yourself? I mean, do you shut off all the notifications on your phone? Uh, what do you do? Do you keep it in a separate room?
right.
What
Oh,
do
this
you
is
have
a
old school
topic
diaries?
of great interest for me because
Okay.
I've been researching a lot about this and I've been implementing a lot of things to
Okay.
uh, the point that I'm very irritating to the people around me when I'm trying to give these suggestions. So yeah, some of the techniques that I use personally.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a OnePlus 6 which doesn't automatically give you the screen time. So I use an app called Digitox. So what
Okay.
this app does is, I mean, it's self-explanatory. It's for digital detox, right? But what it does is it gives you the amount of screen time that you have every day, and what's the amount of time that you're spending on each app. So what I've tried to do off late for the last 1 month or 2 months is very violently track my screen time. So I ensure that I'm not spending more than an hour on my phone every day. And
Wow.
in this research, people feel that yeah, I must be spending at the most 2 to 3 hours on my phone, but they realize that they're spending a lot more on their phone, and they don't even realize. I'll also tell you one very simple anecdote which I've put to the test many times, and the results have always been the same. So many times we pick up our phone for a particular task. Let's say it's to check the weather forecast, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
we end up seeing a notification on WhatsApp, and then we end up responding to people, and then we remember that we have to message someone else. Then we look at a mail, then we listen to a song, and then it's 3 hours of it
Going down the digital rabbit hole.
going down the digital drain. Yes.
Yeah.
So, so this happens to each one of us on an everyday basis to the point that we've
Very
been
true.
numbed to that reality and we don't understand it at all. Um, in fact, we don't even expect it. And in fact, someone's pointing out right now, yes, I'm truly following minimalism in my digital life. I'm trying to. It's a very tough journey. But yeah, what I'm talking about is the concept of digital minimalism. There's a book by the same author of Deep Work
Correct.
titled Digital Minimalism, where I've been really inspired by those concepts, and I'm a very fierce advocate of his philosophies. So one is I violently track my phone time and try to keep it below 1 hour. In fact, one of the tricks to do this is that which were very intuitive for me, but then I read the writer also putting it out there very clearly, is that so many tasks that we can do on our smartphones are also tasks that we can do on our desktops. So we must focus on trying to shift all of these shallow activities onto our desktops. So, for example, even if it's a small activity like checking a mutual fund portfolio or a mutual fund app, rather do it on your desktop, because the way smartphones are designed, and this is one of the key insights of that book, is to sort of get you distracted all the time. So, as soon as you unlock your smartphone, what happens is you see a lot of notifications, and that just pulls you down the digital drain, like I said. And when you go on the desktop, there are no hundreds of notifications that will distract you and call for your attention and fight for your attention, really. So one of the techniques is start shifting everything that you do on your phone to your desktop so that you don't go down the path of distraction. Secondly, one very good technique that he talks about, it's not even a technique, it's largely a habit, is the habit of isolation. So in this world today with all of these distractions, we have really forgotten the entire idea of isolation. So much so that until the 2000s, people used to say that there might never be a time in history where we will not be able to experience isolation. So, but right now, with a smartphone in our pockets, with a vibrate thing that happens whenever we get a message or a notification, it's impossible to spend moments in isolation. And just to define isolation, isolation means that a brief moment or a period of time where there is no translation of ideas from one mind to your mind, right? So ideas can be translated to us by way of reading a text, by way of listening to a song, by way of reading a notification or a video or anything. So just isolating ourselves is extremely critical in this hyper distracted world. And I think none of us have the time these days to sit quietly, think, reflect, and sort of try to understand from our reflections what is it that we could do better or how we could strategize in our life. So I think second suggestion is to really isolate ourselves. And finally, one very nice idea that I want to leave with everyone is the entire art of journaling. So I had been journaling and maintaining notes for a very long time, since the start of 2017, 2016 actually. But I got into the practice of doing it on a daily basis after having read this book, because journaling is also gives you an entire slot of alone time. It allows you to reflect on your ideas, and it's an exercise which will help you create a journal which you will look down upon after 5 years. You look back at it and you really have a very nice time. So it actually captures a lot of the nice moments, a lot of the thoughts that you had, which you would otherwise just miss. So journaling is an effective way to capture your life, way better than any photo or video or any kind of thing can ever do. And more than anything, it's an exercise in self-introspection and reflection.